BlizzCon. Can we talk about No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, it's very important to these guys.
Well, I mean, we've talked about, you know, when it always comes to the end of the year, the conversation always comes up. We're like, where do these points come from?
Yep.
You know, why does this player barely make it or not make it? It comes down to this, Challenger.
Yes.
We have a lot of these players do very well in the circuits, but Challenger is where you get those little piecemeal points here and there.
Or Nate, I mean, we've actually seen ShoWTimE not qualify for some of these WCS stops and have to go through the open bracket, which could be a scary place.
Yeah.
And what if that happens now? He's facing DnS in this PvP, and it's a scary moment. He could get eliminated.
Yep, we have that match loaded in. It is going to be a PvP in the bottom left position. We have the blue Protoss player. He is DnS.
Do you know what DnS stands for?
No, but I have a feeling you're about to give me something.
Nope, I don't either.
Okay.
In the top right-hand side, from Germany, it is ShoWTimE. Nate, a classic couple of Americans commentating a German fighting a French. What more could you ever ask for?
I think this is the part where we just, you know, we just say things that are just blatantly incorrect, right?
Yeah.
I love Germany because Germany is just known for their amazing baguettes, right?
Yes, and their comedians.
Yeah.
Some of the best comedians. I think Dana Carvey's from Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I actually think that DnS is related to Tom Cruise, interestingly enough.
Tom Cruise, the famous French actor.
Yeah, if he makes it, actually, I think he was going to probably stay at one of his mansions in Los Angeles, actually, if he made it to BlizzCon, so he wouldn't have to use the hotel.
Did you know DnS is a former Zerg player, and he said to himself, this is too easy, so he switched to Protoss?
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, not a lot of people are.
At what point does he make the switch to Terran?
Well, when I guess he... I have no joke. Good call there. It's early in the morning here, guys, so the Nate meme machine and the Jeff sarcasm machine is still getting fired up.
We'll get there.
We're working our way there.
We got a lot of games to go today, so.
But getting inside the game here, both players are opting for that kind of forward ramp off of gateways. We did see a PvP from ShoWTimE and Hellraiser. And it's going to be interesting to see if ShoWTimE breaks the mold here a little bit. It's not like in those games. I mean, yes, in game number 2, as you were commentating, he made some pretty big mistakes, like things like Immortals wandering forward, that kind of thing. But otherwise, in terms of build, in terms of mostly execution, he wasn't like wildly off. So I don't think his confidence is rocked in that way. But I think what's weird is to do another PvP, which can be a little bit RNG ridden, can be a little bit gambly, and to do it for your life in WCS early in the season.
Yeah, we do have ShoWTimE opening with the same build that we saw him using the first match, where against Hellraiser, where he went for this Stalker Sentry, and he's going to be matched by that. So DnS is doing the same thing, and he's going to go into double StalKraft after this, but ShoWTimE is going to open with a second Sentry in control as DnS picks off his scouting probe.
And that is 9 times out of 10 just a guy who wants to expand. Yeah, there's the next. Okay, no, I was laughing because I saw the gateways being added, but I got kind of confused in the colors for a second. I was like, he wants to expand, 2 gateways go down. I'm like, oh, here we go. No, but it's going to be DnS actually opting for the aggressive opening here against ShoWTimE. And this is kind of, not to toot my own horn too much, but this is kind of what I was talking about. I'm worried about ShoWTimE in the scene in the sense that he's known as a very safe player, wants it to go longer, wants it to get very macro-y, and these other guys in these tournament situations can try to capitalize on that.
Yep, we saw that a big aggressive play work very well on Eastwatch, and that's exactly what Hellraiser did. He's like, well, I just have more Stalkers than you, and he kind of waited for that hallucinated Phoenix, almost felt like, since that really reduced the number of force fields that he had. But with this faster third Sentry, do you think that that helps enough? He does send out the hallucinated Phoenix.
Yeah, so we're going to have to see if the Phoenix sees anything. I believe he's
over
building a shield battery, but it's not actually on the low ground. It's up inside the main base trying to block for something like an Oracle showing up. Just now, the shield battery going down after a Robo, after these units. I don't think it'll finish in time, and even if it did, the amount of units that are going to show up here is going to be a problem. He's actually just canceling the low ground natural, and that is actually a phenomenal choice, probably.
Yeah, we saw this on Eastwatch, where he could not hold the base, and especially with the Sentry here, his units will have no way to retreat without Blink, so he's going to give up the natural to DnS.
Yep.
And with the units that he has, he's really not a whole lot on top of that ramp. But you said that the Immortal's going to come out, and that will help a lot versus the Stalkers.
Well, he'll win the straight-up fight, but he also has those Sentries. He can just kind of force field off 1 or 2 Stalkers, back up, pick them off, and go there forever. So the advantage kind of switches into a weird place right now. DnS is going to make a couple more Sentries to say, okay, you're never coming to this low ground. Even with Blink, blinking from that ramp specifically, with it cluttered with the gateways and kind of all that stuff, is a really weird blink. So it's going to be about tech which for right now, DnS does not know. Well, I was just about to say he doesn't know much about, but there's the Hallucinated Phoenix, so he does see everything. He knows to expect Robo. And from there, it should be something like an Immortal drop, which is problematic, but that doesn't get... So there's a weird thing. Sorry, I'm being very long-winded here.
It's okay. You're the
He either can break down that ramp to then expand, or he goes across the map. But if he goes across the map to do that damage, it's a pseudo all-in. He either does game-ending damage, or he's just behind because the Nexus is finished. And sure, you killed 15 probes, but the guy's making 2 at a time and is already up 12. So it's like you have to end the game, basically.
Man, it's a really awkward position to be in. We have the Prism being made now, but the Robotics Bay is done. So
yeah.
Where does he go from here? Is it? Oh, he got the Disruptor queued up.
I guess Disruptor. That was not what I was going to say. It could have been maybe a Colossus to break force fields of the ramp.
That's what I would have guessed.
That. He is going to use this to get down below the ramp, and I think this is the right call. I like this from ShoWTimE. So there's the force field, but again, the Immortals are so strong that this mostly Stalker force really can't fight this.
Ooh, good snipes with the Adepts though. He doesn't lose any of them, and he picks off 2 of the sentries, so buys himself a bit of space. Hallucinated Phoenix still scouting around.
Oh, yeah, Hallucinated Phoenix, but also followed by real Phoenixes. And I like that. I actually like that from DnS. If he just goes Robo, he's just behind. You can make the argument that he was ahead with the Nexus. That's sure fine and good, but if ShoWTimE decides to kind of all in or do a big push, it doesn't really help you there. But he sees, nope, you're committed to these Robo units, and like 4 or 5 Phoenix show up, they pick up the Disruptors, they pick off the Warp Prism, and it's lights out for ShoWTimE.
He's got to be very careful with the way that he's moving out, as he has that Prism and his whole army just chasing forward onto DnS. He's going to force field out a Stalker. Not able to finish it off, though. And those Phoenix that you mentioned, of course, they would love to get their hands on that War Prism.
Yeah, and they kind of show themselves early here, and I think that's interesting. I would have loved for him to hold back on this and get to, like I said, 4 or 5 Phoenix, and then reveal when ShoWTimE's fully committed across the map that, hey, I have these Phoenix, and that's problematic for what you have. I think DnS is trying to buy time because he's uncomfortable with what his own army is, and maybe that's the more savvy call. He's going to shade forward here, doesn't see everything, but he knows that, I mean, ShoWTimE's here. He's pushing.
Yeah, the Adepts are kind of poking forward, of course, using the shades to get vision and open the door to possibly jump on it, but the Phoenix are going to pick up they're going to pick up the Disruptor, and they're able to focus it down. It's not able to shoot. A volley picks up both of the Immortals as another Disruptor comes into the back, but the force fields prevent the units from capitalizing on the raised Immortals.
Fantastic control from ShoWTimE, force fielding off the majority of those units, making it really weird, and a huge connection there with that Disruptor. He did have the Immortals kind of scalpeled off from the force, but it didn't matter because they weren't having a full engagement. Now ShoWTimE's doing what he can supply-wise. He is a little bit ahead in army, but behind in workers, so he's trying to do what he can to kind of slow down DnS, but looking to be a little bit of an exchange unless they overly commit here.
Yeah, he does still have that Disruptor alive, barely saved it with 12 hit points, as the Immortal's also going to try to recharge its shields and get that battery going again, or excuse me, the barrier going again.
Yep.
He starts a Forge, and the rest of his gas is back home, so ShoWTimE kind of saying, you know what, I'm not going to commit everything that I have to trying to end the game right now, since it is still, at this point, 2 bases versus 2 bases.
Yeah, but look where they are in the stat lines. Very similar in both workers and army, and both those categories. In fact, well, I mean, they're just kind of going back and forth there, but ShoWTimE was behind. He had lost the Nexus. He was caught off guard in that way, but made the extremely savvy choice. Keep in mind, this is the loser match. You lose this, or you especially if you fall 0-1, things get really claustrophobic, but he was able to say, nope, I understand the situation. This is what I have to do to try and have a chance to win, but it's a tough call, makes it. Micros his way out. Now we're kind of in an equal game. Different techs, but very close.
Yeah, we do have that. The Disruptors, I haven't seen a whole lot of these in the PvP recently. Is this becoming more of a thing again, or is this more of like a ShoWTimE meme this game?
A little bit. They're not what they used to be. Neeb for that, a while there made it this is what you do in PvP. So it's kind of nice because they're one of the things you do. It's interesting though because he already knows that Phoenix are available and out there. So I can't imagine he remains committed to making more Disruptors. They don't get hard countered by Phoenix, but they are countered by Phoenix. If they just pick them up, it just really disrupts them. Whoa.
Wow.
I know. You did it.
You got me. We still have the Prism out on the map. So ShoWTimE has the capabilities to try and get aggressive. Because the Phoenix are in his face, they're not hunting down.
Yeah.
They're not going to find it anytime soon by the looks of things. We have, that normal PvP progression, right? The attack upgrades coming in, charged, Templar Archives, and how do you feel about the Immortal count situation then when you look at this in terms of like balancing out these compositions, like Immortals versus Archons versus Zealots?
You generally just keep chugging them out there because they come off that robo that's not doing much else for you, as long as you have a Warp Prism out there and an Observer or two. The interesting thing is the Disruptors are a huge, huge boon for ShoWTimE. Like, that's a problem. That's a problem for DnS, and he's in this awkward spot where he's like, well, I have Phoenix. He knows that and should be worried about it. But if I don't keep making Phoenix, all of a sudden there's like 5 or 6 Disruptors against my 2 or 3 Phoenix, and, you know, those explosions annihilate the Zealots, or they get into the core and destroy my Immortals or something like that. That's a huge problem. So it's kind of DnS that's in this weird spot where he's like, hey, are you still making more of those Disruptors, or are you going to go into Immortals?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I know like a lot of changes have happened to the Disruptor since the release of Legacy of the Void, of course, but man, like I just think back to those big fights where it was, that was probably the most painful thing to endure, right? It was just like, it was, but at that point it was also just Stalkers and Disruptors. Yeah,
but it was fun, it was exciting. I'm not necessarily saying that they should or shouldn't have changed them. But it was definitely dominant. Like, you couldn't go much else. And I do like PvP right now because you are seeing Stargates, you are seeing Robo, you're still seeing gateway timings. It's kind of fun how diverse it is right now, and that's really made the matchup a lot better.
Yeah, we have another Prism coming out for ShoWTimE. Photon cannons are being added at the bases to protect against, you know, I guess the potential for any drops that might come in, or a Phoenix harass at this point. As 2 Adepts are going to shade their way over to the natural. We do have a Zealot Warp in, and with the Photon Cannon, they shouldn't be able to get too much. They're going to focus down a handful of probes, just 2 so far.
Yeah, but they're pretty worthless. You don't really want them in your army comp, so he gets a little bit of information. Not that he probably didn't know any of what he did get, and he gets a couple of probe kills, so it's okay. I do like this second Warp Prism from ShoWTimE. That's very interesting for me. So one could be to reinforce the army, and the other could be for that kind of backfield attack. We've seen ShoWTimE add Photon Cannons. Has DnS put any in his base?
Yeah.
Just the one, I guess. No shield battery, though.
Yeah, he's just got one in his base, so he's going to try to hold position to probes, but the Zealots get on top of the cannon, and so they're going to start working away at those workers. The army is coming back. Of course, he has the Phoenix to lift him up, but good amount of worker kills here.
Yeah. I mean, 12. A lot of damage done. And kind of interesting, too. They're I keep saying interesting, guys. I will break away from that word. I'm sorry. There it is. There's the Dark Shrine, because in PvP, it's not a question of will they make a Dark Shrine. It's more of a win. And I always find it funny, kind of as like an armchair psychologist. I love when you see a base has just the one cannon. I mean, that was DNS's base, but DnS was still like, you know what? Maybe he doesn't have any. Add the Dark Shrine. Just walk 4 DTs in there, win the game.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, that's scary. I started playing with Protoss a little bit recently. You forget about those units once you hit that 20-minute mark.
Everyone does. That's the funny part about it. Like, everybody. Protoss players, myself, have been playing forever, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't have a Dark Shrine. Well, yeah, that's weird.
Oh, let me just send it at his base. Wow, he actually has nothing. So the Prism on the south side got caught, as we have just a little bit of smattering of harass going on both sides. That's going to get cleaned up on the east. On the west, the Zealots are back in DNS's third base. We have a handful of probes killed. He still has the Prism. And then you see, of course, there's the Dark Templar that you talked about being used defensively. And DNS is just setting himself up on the low ground here.
The fact that that base has nothing there is really interesting. Now actually using up some of this energy to pick them up, which is really kind of weird. Massive hit from the first Disruptor. And there is just the 4 of them, I think. So he hasn't added a whole lot. But again, there is not really a natural predator for them. He was actually trying to use up some of the energy off that Phoenix so they couldn't get feedbacked by Templar. But in doing so, what do? Their role just becomes, I guess I'm looking for a Warp Prism, and that's about it. So you can see DNS kind of waffling on the decision-making there.
Yeah, and this Warp Prism is going to add quite a few Zealots with this double Immortal drop inside of the main base, and the army is still outside of where that third is, so he's forcing him to fight a battle on 2 fronts, and it looks like he's going to try to engage this army. Now he lifts up the Disruptors as he pushes ShoWTimE back towards this ramp. He can't move his whole army through that choke point.
He does get him on that low ground, caught unaware. ShoWTimE backs up, but it costs him a lot of his forces here. DNS might have, well, he won that position, but he's going to go ahead and have to back up here. He's slightly ahead in workers, and he's pretty far ahead in army, but a lot of that's in here doing a lot of damage, but not helping the main army. And this is a chaotic game for sure. Neither player really sure where they stand. ShoWTimE's going to back up, but inside the main, stuff is getting bad. The other nice thing about the Dark Shrine, which again, ShoWTimE doesn't have, is defensively it's very powerful. You can warp in some DTs and chase something like this away, but he didn't have one, so he's going to tap out. DNS actually gets the win off the back of the massive damage done inside the main.
Yeah, that harass call when he's down there, they're kind of playing around for the positioning. The footwork's a little awkward, but then you take the 2 Immortals up, he gets the Zealots and that DT that says, well, if you want to warp in Zealots to deal with this, and you don't take care of the 1 Dark Templar I've mixed in, things are going to be really tough.
Really, it's a tough game because either fight is actually just as important in many ways, and we kind of saw that displayed here. If you lose the big army fight, like if 4 Disruptors just annihilate your whole main army, cool, you're doing damage to my main, but you lost 80 supply of army. There's not really any coming back from that. But the same is true in reverse. If I'm doing massive damage in the main base, shutting off gateways, killing tech, I've got DTs, and all of a sudden there's no observers because maybe 1 or 2 got picked off in the main fight, well, then you're dead as well, because you can go ahead and win the main army fight, but if I retreat and kill your main, then that's how I find my path to victory. It gets a little bit weird, it gets a little bit murky, but DnS seems to be, at least in this first game, consistently the crisper, kind of more decisive player. It's ShoWTimE who's on that back foot. He made some great calls to get back into this game, but then he just kind of sat there with the army and just kind of received this player. He sees at the third that there's no probes, and still was apparently caught off guard a little bit.
Rough day so far. PvP for ShoWTimE.
Yeah.
It's not, things aren't going too well in his favor. 2 games, especially 2 games where he goes for that Stalker Sentry opening, and he has that 3rd killed very early on and just loses the economic advantage that he was playing for. Is there anything that stands out to you? Like, is there a response that he's maybe missing?
Well, this is the hard part, and not to get too far into the head of a player that, you know, I'm not really close to, but ShoWTimE, like you said, is now 0-3 in these PvPs, and they've been very different in how he's lost all 3 of these games. So a lot of times that can get into a player's head because best of 3s feel long, but they're not. It's a really short series, and things can happen really fast. So when I look at ShoWTimE's play, I'm not seeing like some glaring, oh, well, that was a completely wrong call. He's not all-inning at a bad time. It's a couple of subtle things, a little bit of sloppiness again in Hellraiser Game 2. But he's got what it takes. That pushback when he when he got the 2 Immortals in the low ground and shoved towards DnS, that was glimmers of the old ShoWTimE that was just like flawless execution, perfect force fields, and a great engagement. And then even as you pointed out, the choice to kind of go back, add the gases, start teching up, that too was the right time. He had that moment where he was the underdog, but he kind of equalized to push forward, to put the game on that moment in time. Decided not to. So I love this. This has been a very technical, great PvP, but a little bit of my heart is sad because ShoWTimE's been kind of the beast in the past, and he's fallen a little bit here.
Yeah, he's having a really difficult time. He has to win the next 2 maps, of course. As you said, this is the elimination match, so whoever loses this series is out of Challenger EU. As we have our next game loaded up, it is going to be a Protoss versus Protoss on Acid Plant, and we have in the top left position our blue Protoss player. He is leading 1-0. He's DnS.
And needing your guys' support and cheers in the lower right-hand side from Germany, it's ShoWTimE. And it is gut check time. But we talk a lot about experience. We talk a lot about these players making a name for themselves. ShoWTimE is one of those household StarCraft 2 names. You'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
And it's because he does have that experience. He does have that pedigree. He has been at the highest levels, beating the best players, played at BlizzCon. And it's DnS, actually, which is kind of fun in this matchup, that's trying to make a name for himself. We've known him to be a very good player for a while, but we don't have those results. Beating ShoWTimE and maybe clawing his way back up into a top 2 and to make it out of this group, that would be the beginning of that, and that's the spirit of Challenger. It's fun to see this developing.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that. That's really what the Challenger setup is all about, is getting these players that opportunity to, you know, not only just get their names out there, but we have this nice broadcast going. Yep. We're gonna have a lot of these matches be played, and they're kind of fighting for that regional glory to be the EU Challenger champion, and that kind of builds up that hype for them going in. So hopefully you guys, you're looking out for a player like a DnS or Hellraiser that you don't see as much when we get over back to the circuit season, which is not too far away.
No, it's all coming up, which is really fun. WCS season kicking off today. And, you know, for us, it's just great. StarCraft, it's really fun, but keep in mind for these guys, we talked about the points, we talked about the money. WCS is what defines these professional StarCraft 2 players. If you are winning the off tournaments. That's cool. That's great. People will definitely talk about that. But what do people always talk about? The BlizzCon champion, the WCS stop champions, the people that really had those good runs. I mean, I think of last year, I think of Challenger and Special. These are players that have been around for a while, but it was only in WCS where we started to be like, wow, what a year for them. It's really become the dominant way to kind of look at these guys and see where they are in the game.
It rewards your consistent performance throughout the year now as well. Since Challenger, you know, we only had that one big tournament so far, at least in the WCS circuit. In Leipzig earlier this year, there was, of course, Katowice afterwards. But this is where it ramps up because we have Challenger, and then the circuit starts up again in June, and then we've got that all the way through July. And that's when we're going to basically, at that point, when we get to the end of summer, we're getting very close to that global finals where these tournaments, you're going to be looking back and saying, well, you know, if I was a couple points better in Challenger, maybe I would have had better seeding, or maybe I would have qualified.
Life comes at you fast, as they say. ShoWTimE going to go ahead and take that top of the ramp advantage and push back DNS's stalker, excuse me. Try to deny a little bit of information, but there has been that pylon that did go over here. Now, we know that this pylon doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be some kind of proxy tech. It definitely could be. But oftentimes, it's just a pylon to be placed there for later use, like oh, I'm going to reinforce, or, you know, what do you know? I've got a Dark Shrine, and here's a great spot to spawn a couple of DTs. But wow, this is an incredible journey from that probe. It just makes its way all the way through the base and sees the Stargate. Yep,
and I think if you're ShoWTimE, you're like, how did I miss that one? So being able to get in like that is a really nice scout. Of course, ShoWTimE, because he opened with the Phoenix, he has the opportunity to get the scout in with this Phoenix on the other side of the map. He's going to see the robotics facility coming in. He sees the stalkers and the sentries, and that sentry count is also going to tell him that he's not worried about the same sort of big push that he got hit with in the last game.
And it's going to be a nice thing for him to see, as he does have a Phoenix coming out, but by seeing the Robo, he says he has a choice. He could be like, well, I'm going to keep making Phoenix, because against the Robo, that's a very strong composition, or he can say, okay, I'm going to just keep the couple Phoenix, shut down things like the Warp Prism, make him second-guess his tech, and go from there. But he is still producing more Phoenix. Now, 3, as Fear Dragon did point out in the previous series, is kind of one of those normal numbers of, like, I'm not overcommitting to Phoenix. If he goes to 4 and 5 and beyond, that's when it becomes, okay, he's going Phoenix.
Yep, and playing a little bit of a dance here, trying to catch the Adepts as they split up with their shades, and he separates the Phoenix so he can try to at least grab one of them, and he will move out on the map and find them. He also finds the pylon that DNS set up earlier that you were talking about, as we have observers coming out now for ShoWTimE, but that Twilight Council is on the way, +1 attack from the earlier Forge on DNS's side of things.
And it is just the 3 Phoenix, which I'm now remembering, actually, he did in that Hellraiser series. And as I say that, of course, just to prove me wrong, it's a 4th Phoenix.
I clicked on it just for you.
Very good. Well, it is going to be low count, I guess. No, it's 4. Never mind. I'm gonna hold off on my commentary because I'm just wrong on that.
He's going up to 5. It's an interesting number. I mean, with the number of sentries here, it's an easy pick-off, right? So he steps forward, he grabs one of them. As the Adepts actually come into focus, trying to focus probes, I guess. Maybe the sentries too.
You know what's funny? Those are hallucinated stalkers right there. I think that was a panic click. 2 of those stalkers are hallucinated.
Maybe he was hoping he'd lift the wrong one. I don't know why he would go for the stalkers, but
it's weird. So maybe he knew, because ShoWTimE's actually kind of famous for going after that. He'll shade things in to pick off the sentries specifically. Guardian Shield's a very big deal, but also hallucinated Phoenix's scouts, a big deal. Anyways, not to go too far down that path. We just had a couple of weird hallucinated stalkers there.
Yeah, not something you see a whole lot.
No. He's going to make his way into the mirror line here, though. Just the 2 stalkers will ward this, but not slow down the fact that a lot of probes will die. And then you got that negative space behind to go ahead and fall back to.
This map, that space is really useful. On the north side, though, getting dangerously close to the High Templar.
Yep.
A couple of feedbacks available for DNS to work away at these Phoenix, but he's going to make his way out of the base, grab another probe, and not too shabby. So let's look at the follow-ups. You have Charge. It's going to be done a lot faster for DNS. He also has that +2 attack coming in. +1 is not done yet for ShoWTimE. He already has the Templar. So tech-wise, DNS is looking pretty. They're on the same economy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the weird spot Phoenix find themselves in. We saw that be an issue earlier as well, even in the TvP. They're really strong. They shut down air harass, and if your opponent doesn't overreact to them, though, they are expensive. The Stargate tech only produces these guys for the most part at this stage of the game, and all they can really do is pick off probes. So if you don't pick off a significant number of probes to make up for the cost of those Phoenix, then you kind of put yourself a little bit behind. Is that what happened this game? I'm not sure. But we do see that ShoWTimE is a little bit ahead in Army, but keep in mind a good 10 of that is Phoenix. And then worker-wise, they're just now equal, but ShoWTimE's picked off like 9 probes to get equal. So just to give you an idea of kind of what they do.
And this is the part where he can try to claw his way ahead.
Yeah.
As he's going to grab a few more of DNS's probes. The feedbacks are landing, but he's doing a good enough job of spending his energy that the feedbacks are not even getting past the shields. However, big commitment from DNS. It's immediately spotted by ShoWTimE. The observer sees it. He's like, okay, you want to build a gateway right outside my base? No.
Not today. And that's good, because ShoWTimE's had I think in all 3 of his games, there's been this moment where he like sees a critical thing, like a underpopulated third or some kind of critical tech, and then his response to it has just not been at that top tier caliber that you expect from a ShoWTimE, and he's lost because of it. But this game, the Phoenix getting the damage done, as you point out, Nathanius, their strength is that they get to stay around. So.
Wow, okay. I was like panicking here. He had the Warp Prism about to finish with Phoenix here. He cancels it and starts it again. And now he's like, well, I actually just can't. It's like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, the Phoenix just won't leave. He knew he picked off the gateway, by the way, and the pylon, like you pointed out. So reinforcements are not coming. Fighting at the top of this ramp with the smaller army is ShoWTimE, but he's going to go ahead and start getting that early damage in there. And it's going to be DNS that loses confidence and backs up. The Immortals get picked up. It's going to cost him. He's going to try to pick off the Phoenix, but that's fine. They don't really have a role later in the game, so any damage done here is just nice. And DNS is going to tap out ShoWTimE with his first win of the day.
That's just a really, really nice play to be able to get. The Phoenix preventing the Warp Prism. He wasn't able to reinforce, losing the gateway. And DNS just seemed dead set on trying to make that big push to kill him at the end, despite not having the gateway that we were talking about, despite not having the Warp Prism. And we saw that even towards the end, just that fight gets turned so fast when that next wave comes out for ShoWTimE.
Well, what great understanding from ShoWTimE, because like, again, for us in our we're in a Sky Palace commentating StarCraft 2 from a moon base right now.
Yeah.
And we got here on a golden jet, so it's very easy for us to comfortably be like, oh, he canceled the Warp Prism, how nice. But in the middle of that game and how intense that is, especially when you're down 0-1 for ShoWTimE, to be like, I picked off the pylon and gateway, so he doesn't have the forward warp in place. I'm seeing the Robo build something. I see the 1 second where he cancels it and starts something else. I think that's a Warp Prism. So he's attacking me, but also he can't reinforce, which empowered ShoWTimE to say, I'm going to take the fight. I'm the guy that can reinforce. If DNS makes the mistake of pushing forward anyways, I'm going to win that battle. So ShoWTimE, again, such a cerebral, good player, now connecting the dots and making it one cohesive moment so he can win. It's really nice.
Yeah, and I think that also becomes like a tilting moment where you're like, well, I just need to get this one unit out. The Phoenix are on top of my robotics facility. I actually cannot do anything. And you make a great point, because it's either going to be, it's most likely to be that Warp Prism, because you're not looking to get the Observer that fast, right, in that stage of the game. So even if it's an Immortal, like, you still don't want that to come out in front of 5 Phoenix by itself.
Yeah, it gives information too, though. Yeah. If an Immortal did come out, he thinks to himself, well, then maybe he does have the ability to reinforce, or he's not attacking. But it's just nice seeing this level of play in a PvP from these two players, where they're getting really kind of cool information and reacting to it, because a lot of players, I'll throw myself under this bus, I don't know that I would have done that. If my Phoenix were in his main base, I'd be like, I'm going to go kill probes. I wouldn't know to think to park on top of the Robo and see what's coming out of it. Yeah. But ShoWTimE is just that next level. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, really, really great job. Really great Phoenix control. I think that's the kind of gameplay that we expect out of ShoWTimE.
Yeah.
He switched it up. So we saw him kind of match the double stalker opening. Let's see what he can do on the next game. It's going to be on Eastwatch.
And Nate, this is what we were talking about. This is how fast life comes at you. All we were talking about is ShoWTimE. You're going to get eliminated from WCS Challenger in this first go. Wow, that's crazy. And now it's DNS that all of a sudden he's got to be like, wait a second. The winner of this game gets to fight on. The loser just has to watch. That's it. Yeah. So DNS for the first time so far is up for elimination.
Yeah, so this map, we're going to see our first player eliminated from Challenger EU, as we have Eastwatch, the northeast position. The blue Protoss player. He took that first map, and let's see if he can close it out. It's DNS.
It's DNS.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like they always like, well, don't do the big crowd one, because there's technically not the crowd. There's no one here. No one is.
Oh, I'm having a very polite and respectful co-commentator.
If you want to do an epic intro,
no,
I'll clap, I'll everything.
You know my stance on this, Nate. I'm completely against it. No, I've been.
Players.
I've been having an inner chuckle on behalf of Fear Dragon, who every time says, put your hands together. And I just imagine these guys at home like, yes! ShoWTimE!
You've never done that at home, though?
No.
Come on.
Clap by myself?
Yeah.
I got a window. I'm in an apartment. There's a window there. I'm already the crazy guy yelling about StarCraft all the time, but if I was the crazy guy clapping by himself in the window.
When I saw M. Canning in that Nation Wars interview, I had to clap by myself. That was worth it.
All right, I'll give you that.
I was overwhelmed.
Okay, for those kind of moments, maybe I would clap. Yeah. And you know what? If we're being honest, which, you know, it's just you and me here, Nate, so why not? I have clapped at home for sure. There's been some pretty cool moments in the StarCraft world that happen that you got to put your hands together. But introducing the players,
not actually the most epic moment.
No,
that happens. Maybe if it's the grand finals, big stage, but it's PvP.
Just a maybe though.
It's esports. Maybe.
Just a maybe. Both players are not going to get too crazy here. We just have the gateways at the top of the ramp, and to give it a little bit of a thought to that, by the way, guys, it's just to pare down the space so that if they do go adept, you can drop a pylon, or you can have your own adepts shade and block that spot. But as Fear Dragon pointed out in that first match, force fields will not stop adepts from getting in there, so players will use whatever they can to limit that. And it's kind of funny because it used to be the thing to do, is get adepts into your opponent's base and kill them with it. Now it's more of a, like, kind of a gentleman's duel agreement where we're like, we both don't really do that, but one guy does, and you're like, okay, well, my gateways are in the right place, so you're dirty, but I caught you.
Yeah. And we have that Stalker Sentry opening, again, out of ShoWTimE, and he goes straight away for the second Sentry as he takes that expansion very early on. But it's actually a double Sentry follow-up for DnS, so it doesn't look like that big aggression is going to come out, that base-canceling aggression that we were talking about from the earlier games.
No, not yet. Both players falling back on their macro sides here, which would be nice. We've had some nice PvPs here, but perhaps not late-game PvP per se. But I can't really complain. We've seen some nice mid-game stuff. And both players get to kind of fan out and look for different things as their techs do develop here. We do see ShoWTimE opting for the Twilight Council for the first time in this matchup. It could be Dark Shrine. It becomes a little bit more likely as we start to see like pylons around the map and that kind of thing. But what's really weird in the matchup right now, by the way, is people are doing DT drop in PvP. I don't know that it's at this level, so I'm very curious to see if they do that, because it's a very high risk, very high reward play. It's one of those things where if you're not ready for it, 4 Dark Templars in your base, it turns out Nate will do massive damage.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those are dangerous. That reminds me. Well, just like I guess the other side of that is when the Blink first came out and you realize that if a bunch of DTs could actually get onto your army, it's like, well, that damage is pretty damn high.
They swing those swords quite well, but it's going to be Blink. It's not going to be Dark Templar for the time being, at least. And here comes that first scout. Both players should have Hallucinated Phoenix pretty close together. Sees the Robo. And in fact, I would be a little bit curious, because he just sees the Robo. You'll notice ShoWTimE has the Robo at about the same time, a little bit behind, and Blink. So if I'm ShoWTimE and I see that, I go, what else do you have? Because I've got Blink and a Twilight Council, and you just are now getting the Robo? But that is actually all.
Yeah,
that is actually it.
He doesn't have anything else with that. That is.
ShoWTimE's way smarter than me, though, so he probably didn't ask that question. But I'm over here asking that question, and I can see everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'll let you have that one, Jeff.
Yeah.
The Phoenix is going to come in and sees everything as well, so he also knows what's going on. He's got the Robo, the Twilight. We talk about the Forge, but he does have the Immortals coming out first, as he got that Observer out already. So Immortals now for DnS. That Phoenix Scout's going to come in one more time. Doesn't see really anything out of place. He's like, okay, well, my Forge is faster. I still don't see a Twilight Council, so you can't get Blink or Charge at this point.
Finds a pylon out in the map.
Is this where the panic sets in, where you're like, maybe he went DTs?
I'm looking at that production. I'm looking at the production tab, waiting for the panic, and it's just not there. ShoWTimE is, at least for now, as cool as a cucumber. He does have an Observer at the front of his base, so if DTs did start to walk in, he would be able to catch it. Great scout from DnS here, though. He does see the gold base go down basically as it is going down. So that allows him the opportunity to take his own third. And I will say this, reactionary all-ins, like, oh, you're taking that third, I'll add 5 gateways and go after you, are not very good. More often than not, you're going to want to just take your own third. But I'm the commentator sitting here watching these superior players play, so DnS is going to go out here. The nice thing about this base is because of where it's at, you can cancel it and like recall back, but his ability to reinforce this and really commit to it is just not there.
Yeah, we also have to keep in mind the layout of the map. If he busts down these destructible rocks, he's going to have a very hard time actually reaching his base to defend. Since there is an Immortal here, Just Stalkers is going to have a very hard time cutting it.
That moment right there is what Dustin Browder envisioned when he first created Rocks, and then later created StarCraft.
Yeah, and then first
got him.
You don't learn to crawl then walk. You learn to make rocks, then you learn to make StarCraft.
Yep, and then use them intelligently. So the base does get canceled. ShoWTimE was able to cancel the Nexus as opposed to lose it, so that is nice for himself. Not the biggest of deals. Both players very similar in supply. And behind that, DnS did not opt to take his own third. He's just kind of waiting. He is adding gateways now, and there is that third Nexus at the much more reasonable third base spot.
Yep.
But it's ShoWTimE.
He's adding a lot of gates again. But that Phoenix comes in, he's like, this punk is going for the gold base one more time. ShoWTimE, at least now he's taking care of the rocks, so they won't be able to break that down again. So he has that nice little comfort spot, and he's going to use these stalkers to go out on the map. I guess check for the gold base, eventually check for that other third position. So he says, well, to himself, well, if you take your normal third and I get the gold third, this should just be, it should just be peaches.
Oh, it's huge. It's a mirror matchup. They both have the same tools at their disposal for the most part. And if one guy's just raking in way more dough, it's a big, big deal. DnS scouts at this time, as Nathaniel's pointed out, and is kind of holding back. He's kind of built up his army composition. He is still adding gateways as well, but both players are doing that. And it becomes a very uncomfortable situation.
Those stalkers
actually blinking, though.
Yeah, they just blink straight into the base using the hallucinated Phoenix. They take out the pylon that's got +2 attack and the warp prism.
Oh, they got the warp prism too.
Yeah. So everything here shut down for a good little bit. And actually, I guess it made it easier to harass the probes because the shield battery was also unpowered.
Remember those stalkers, man. That's a huge moment in time. He's even going to get a look at the army, see what it's made up of, and see that it's still back here. But with that warp prism getting picked off, he has to say to himself, he's coming after me. Especially, by the way, with the gold being scouted and him having it and not seeing, like you said, a gold for DnS. That means he knows. DnS cannot let that continue.
Yep. And this position of the army for ShoWTimE, I mean, as long as those stalkers are kind of poking and prodding, if he has an idea of where the army is, we've talked about this before, knowing which alley your opponent's going to attack. Will it be through the east side? There are length of sight blockers on all of these positions, so there's some weird madness that can happen if the observers are used to pick each other off, or if you lose your observer and you don't have any of that high ground vision, you have to kind of attack through that in order to have vision to even shoot your opponent's army from range.
Both players very similar in army supply. Upgrade advantage is, at least for right now, for ShoWTimE. And as Nathaniel's pointed out, it's all about getting through these chokeholds, but it's ShoWTimE that sees that he wants to come through here. Is he going to grant him full access? It kind of looks like he is, but he's got a good concave behind that. The Guardian Shields do go up. Zealots clashing together. Archon's behind. Immortals doing what they can. A better Immortal count for ShoWTimE as he takes a massive supply advantage. The position's just too strong. The Immortals are now on top, getting kited backwards from that Warp Prism. Stalker step forward to try to kill it, but there's no more fluff here. And DnS is going to take a massive loss, if not the game. Even losing the Warp Prism with 2 Immortals in it, that's going to do it. ShoWTimE claws his way back and gets the win. A nice
GG
showing. I was stuck with that 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry. Great PvP series, and it got kind of to the spot where DnS, it's one of those things where like both players know, okay, this is not a peculiar moment in time where one guy has information or the other guy's like, I think something's going on. When he scouts the gold going down again, and there's nothing happening for the first like 30 seconds of that happening, ShoWTimE goes, oh, you're going to attack me to try to win. And DnS goes, yeah, I got to kill you. I have to. So with both players knowing that, it gives all the advantage to ShoWTimE to say, I'm going to pick where we fight and how we fight. Well, I'm not going to pick where we fight, but I'm going to pick how we fight, and it made all the difference.
He had a good spread on the other side of the length of sight blocker, and also just having the gold base. That minerals for those Zealot Warp-ins are going to come in, and you're going to be able to warp them in as fast as those charges reset on the cooldown. So just a great game. I really like the way that he slowed down the attack, too. That Prism might have been out a little bit faster if the Stalkers hadn't sniped the pylon. The attack could have hit faster. So that was a good
really well done. Nicely done by ShoWTimE, and he is able to win that series, which gets him to the decider. What do we call that?
So ShoWTimE will have another chance to get out of this group now, as he'll wait the loser of our next series. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the World Championship Series Challenger. We'll be back with our next match, Terran versus Protoss.